Hello and welcome everyone to this new moon True Prosperity Prayer Collective call. And thank you so much for all of you who are here present and for everyone who's listening in and the recording. My name is Robin Flynn, and I am the co-founder of Visionary Hearts and Star River Sanctuary with my beloved husband, Darcy Copas. And just over a month and a half ago in ceremony, communing with some of the beautiful plant spirits and with an incredible circle of human beings and women. And I was really asking for guidance about how I and we could best support our local and international community, recognizing that there's unique pressures and forces within this time. One of the greatest challenges of being alive right now is how much continual information we are receiving into our consciousness. No other generation has ever experienced this type of continual stimulation. And a lot of what we're receiving, a lot of the messages are coming from what we call the fear matrix. Now, not to be fearful of the fear matrix, because that actually strengthens the fear matrix. It's a paradox. But fear, symbolizing, representing, being an acronym for false evidence appearing real. Now, in the deepest root of my being, and I know that what lives within me is not just mine, but it's a collective experience as part of being human. That at the deepest root is this core wound of scarcity. And it's something that is so powerful that it's actually shaped almost all of human culture. And when we work with, the ceremonial ways, be them with the divine sacraments or through our own communion with spiritual practice, at some point we come to this inner threshold, which is really an interesting process because it's like we're coming up against being these radically infinite soul beings. Like what we are as soul is so profound. Our true essential nature is actually infinitely creative. And so when we then come into this earth school and we come into the challenge and the opportunity to be this big, vast being in this itty bitty kind of awkward body, we come up against this threshold of where that creativity and then this reality meet up. And I don't know if anybody else is, an artist, a painter or a musician or, in your creative practice. But strangely, it's the constraint that allows our creativity to manifest. Part of me has just been so frustrated at different times that it's like, I can see it. I can envision it. Like here we are at Star River Sanctuary, and it is a beautiful piece of land that has been so lovingly tended for the previous stewards of the land for 40 plus years. We have all these flowering plants that are in total blossom now. We have like literally thousands and thousands of flowers. It's amazing. And I can see what it's gonna be. And that tension of not being able to take that vast creative power that is my true essential nature and just make it happen is, to me, a place that is, I mean, honestly, on the day-to-day, really frustrating. Like, I know in all of our lives, those places where we just like, we can see where we want to be, how we want it to be. And through our, like, just our will, we're not quite able to make it happen yet. But that constraint, to me, is a really important place to highlight. And as I was preparing for today's call, I found the last 24 hours to be, one teaching after another. And, the gift of the shamanic worldview is understanding that within everything is spirit. And therefore, within everything is the teacher, is the, a guide, a message. This is really the understanding of synchronicity as well from the Jungian work, which I feel like, Jung's work and shamanic wisdom are just an incredibly rich, like they're incredibly rich companions. But in the last 24 hours, it's been seeing all these places where, in my own life and then within the collective and within different people in my life, where this constraint, like what happens when it comes in? And then from that, then, how do I meet it? And as I was praying and receiving guidance for this call, what was really coming through is, some of what we have received and what we call, practices within the way of sovereignty. And the radical thing about healing, like true healing, which is also true awakening. Like if we just have an awakening experience, but we don't embody it, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just an experience. And there's way too many practices and spiritual traditions that don't have any meat in that way. It's like our beautiful elder, Don Oscar Mira Quesada says, our spiritual practice needs to grow corn and potatoes. There needs to be some sort of fruit or potato for what we're doing. And so this is where, this awakening, when it's embodied, that is healing. And simultaneously, as we're on the healing journey and we go through these processes, we just naturally awaken to ways we have been living that are tied in, hooked in to that inner fear matrix. The false evidence appearing real, the construct, the counter image, the wetiko. And what happens when you get a whole bunch of people all hooked into that and then interacting from that level is a lot of complex shadow dynamics. And really, there's nothing we can do about what's happening out there, but we have absolute 100% sovereign power within what happens in here. And true prosperity, to me, like healing, like awakening, is a natural side effect of living within our sovereignty. Now, sovereignty is I love that it's become like a meme for our time. I think it's so good. It's so important. Because what spiritual soul sovereignty is a radical body autonomy and radical personal responsibility. And it's not exactly about manifesting the Lambo, as in Lamborghini. It's not about, creating a prosperity or wealth consciousness that then we're, in a process of accumulation. What's wild is when I'm in this place and I've had this experience over and over and over, and I'm still right at the living edge of it. I am in the practice. What the teachings I'm sharing, I am in continual practice with. I have mastered nothing. I'm in the practice of everything. And I hope to be that way my whole life, honestly. I hope to never to be, if I ever strive to be anything, it's a master of nothing or nothing. But in sharing these teachings and sharing what I'm practicing and sharing this deeper practice of sovereignty, we may or may not manifest the Lambo or fill in the blank. Because being a creatrix or creator isn't about being a controller. It's not about controlling life. Control is one of the key mechanisms of the fear matrix within, because we only strive to control anything so that we can suppress and repress our fear. When we are striving to control our life, our environment, our finances, our health, our body, our relationships, that is an expression of fear. And fear does not prosper. Love prospers. Love is what prospers. Fear, it creates complex systems of debt and entanglement. Fear justifies almost any behavior that the ends, justify the means. Fear is a separation game, which is naturally occurring. Like, having fear is so natural. It's just what we do with it. And so the tenants, the core foundational tenants, the pillars that I've been able to find in my deep inquiry into my own heart and honestly my own personal neuroses and failures, which are complex and many, like all of us, has been that sovereignty has 4 core aspects: spiritual freedom, personal responsibility, consent, and meaning, purpose. So I'm going to break this down a little bit before we go into a practice, because today it's just felt like whatever's happening with this moon, it feels kind of crunchy, a little spicy, but not necessarily in the crunchy, spicy combination that tastes good, more like soul growth crunchy. And so, one of my personal heroes and somebody who I think has been an inspiration to like countless human beings is Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And before he, wrote this book, which he wrote right after his time in the concentration camps, he just wrote it like 2 years after he left 3 years in different concentration camps. And in revisiting his material, I found myself just, weeping, not at the horror, but in gratitude for the human spirit. Because spiritual freedom, our soul sovereignty, is not about having the outside environment perfect. Super Shanti, which I love and I want, but is not always the reality of life. Sometimes we're in places and in experiences that are not the level of the World War II concentration camps, but are our own hell realm. I've talked to so many people in the last week who are dealing with really intense healing crises, multiple cancers, really intense viruses, neurological conditions. There's a lot that all of us are working with, but some are working with heavier and more intense challenges and opportunities that aren't so much, and true prosperity to me isn't so much about having everything just be so beautiful and good and pleasurable all the time. It's actually about a fierce love and resilience that's cultivated through recognizing the inner power within me to choose. And what is amazing about the story of Viktor Frankl is that even when so much choice, profound levels of choice were taken from him and from so many, as is happening right now to many of our brothers and sisters on the planet. And maybe even we feel that in our life right now. That he found what he did have choice in. He found his power. And that was a spiritual freedom that is beyond any outer circumstance. But to choose how to meet what life was bringing. And through that choosing to find what he calls meaning or purpose, and what I have related to in my own sojourn through very challenging places that some could call my own personal hell realms. We all have those. I've called the teacher. Because what I've recognized, and what when we are in this place, as you know, we all find ourselves from time to time, maybe for long periods of time, maybe for a genuine, deep dive into the underworld, a dark night of the soul. That meaning, that purpose, that teacher resides in all things. And so that power of choice, and to be able to be in a place of reclaiming spiritual freedom by recognizing that no matter what's happening, we get to choose how we meet it. Even the biggest, intensest triggers within us. The core wounds that we've been working on for decades, but are still there, and somebody in their innocence hits it, and we go, even in that, when we finally catch ourselves, and it's okay to get triggered, we all do all the time. And so, one of the things that I feel in this time is this movement beyond. It's like a transcendence of I would say more the adolescent, like the immature ways to meet our creative power, which is the source of life and the source of true prosperity. And reclaiming that this is about cultivating a state of inner being that doesn't need, or it isn't dependent on that thing that we so want, that we've made into a goal, to happen. That no matter how out of wellness we feel in dis-ease, how financially strapped we are, how challenging our intimate relationship or partnership is, or our relationship with our kids, or you fill in the blank. Regardless of what we want to manifest, what that goal is, which a lot of systems are kind of over, like stepping over the gift in the challenge. But this way that, that Viktor Frankl explored, and that, some of the great human beings who've manifested field effects, like what he did, and what there was different amazing human beings throughout time who have accessed a place that was so true in wisdom and power that it actually shifted the entire morphic field of humanity, of our whole family. And this happens through radical personal responsibility. And in that, when we marry and we recognize that, like, everything, every choice, everything is happening in this life, and I can choose to be in resistance, which I've been in different levels of resistance today, just to be totally transparent, and simultaneously do that, like, inner muscle work to be like, how is this an opportunity for me to wake up to a deeper truth of reality? How is the perceived lack in my life, where there doesn't feel like there's a flow, where I'm struggling, where I can't see my way out, how can I turn towards this as an opportunity to awaken to a deeper truth of reality? And I share this because there's just those moments and times, and my heart's really been blown open in the last little while by how many in our community are working with really big challenges. It's no small thing to be in the midst of healing cancer. It's no small thing to have lost a loved one and then still have to keep going. Or to lose your job and figure out how you still need to feed your children. And while none of us are there all the time, we all visit these places. We all visit our own deep challenge. And with all truth and honesty and love, I do share from my own experience that it's those moments that, when met with this inner place, which is really very curious, not knowing everything. In fact, it's kind of like we got to like break down a bit to like be willing to not know anything for a while. These places that we access our sovereignty, our power. And then I feel honestly like from that reconnection to our soul power, which is not here to control life and to curate it and to sculpt it in a way that is the grooviest to us. That's not what the soul is here for. The soul is here for communion. The soul is here to experience everything. The soul is here to create, to channel creativity. Control is not that. So fear is something, instead of to be pushed away, control, it's like, wow, look at that tendency I have. I'm feeling all this anxiety, worry, stress. Actually, if I'm honest, I'm pretty freaked out. And look how when I don't feel that, it moves into these places in my body. And all of a sudden, I've got that tightness in my neck and my jaw and this intense nervousness in my belly. And how when I do that often enough, these stronger patterns of imbalance start to be there. I make myself sick because I don't want to feel fear. And what I'm here to share with this True Prosperity Prayer Collective is that it's turning towards, in my experience, and this is just my experience, so please consider it, bring it to your heart. Please don't take anything I'm saying as the ultimate truth. It's honestly just the leading edge of my own experience. But turning towards and being curious and embracing and welcoming that intensity as a teacher, as holding an essential medicine power that shifts the whole field. And usually, in the depths of it for me, I need to just keep doing it over and over. So if it takes a little while, please don't get frustrated. It's not meant to be easy. If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. So this process, one other piece I want to share actually about, this journey of sovereignty and true prosperity. It's also something I've been really remembering recently. And it's a medicine wheel teaching from one of our elders, Duncan. And he was sharing how, and every rite of passage within his traditional community of the Sikh Blackfeet people was designed for failure. Like the rites of passage to move from adolescence to adulthood, and then through the different challenges within adulthood, which in what he shared is they don't consider you an adult till you're 40, which I actually really appreciated when I first heard this, because I was 30 and, I'm not sure. I'm in my 40s now. And I don't know, the adulting, I'm not, it's hard. I'm sure we have more elders in the circle. It's not the easiest thing. But what Duncan was sharing is that, every rite of passage is actually designed by the elders so that almost everybody fails. Because to step into our spiritual maturity, to be fully engaged adults within our community, which is incredibly rare these days, is just not common. So I honor everybody who's in this call and listening in for being on the path of learning how to grow up and to become spiritually mature adults. But that every rite of passage is designed for failure, is learning how to meet failure, how to move through that helps us to become spiritually mature. And so to me, that process has looked like, really feeling like if I just give enough, if I'm just focused enough, if I just work hard enough that for years it was heal. And while I have profoundly healed my body, it took 15 years of like intense devotion. There was the incredible gifts of the plant medicines, but then there was rebuilding my body. And that was a long journey. But the failures are something that mark us as who we are. You know, what we really stand for. And it's not what anybody else thinks of us. It's not, you know, all the mythos of our time of successful careers or, you know, fill in the blank. To me, it's much more about when the shit hits the fan, do we meet that opportunity to wake up to a deeper level of reality, a deeper truth? And so I'm bringing all of this because I feel like when we're in this process of attuning and apprenticing to the spirit of true prosperity, the spirit of prospering, which is really the spirit of love made manifest, because love prospers. What you love prospers. That without these essential components of spiritual freedom, personal responsibility, the reclamation of our power of yes and no, our choice, our consent, and the teaching, the meaning, the purpose, how we meet life, or how meaningful that situation can be, that we're just going to be on the surface level. There's no roots there. It's kind of like the kind of manifestation, new age, false light aspect of prospering and manifestation. And so I've just spoken for a while, and I want to pause and take a breath myself and just see if in the chat anybody has any reflections or points of clarification or questions before we move into a shorter practice.
No questions, Robin, from me, but what a wealth of beautiful wisdom you just shared. Thank you so much.
Aw, thanks so much. Thanks, Naomi. Sweet. Yeah, the fire is burning hot around here. Okay, well, let's move into ooh, I like that. Thanks, Brenda. False evidence. When false evidence appears real, fierce exploratory action required. I like it. Ooh, yeah. Sweet. I hope you're okay if I bring that, I learned from that and I put it in my pocket. Yes, I'm going to write that down. Okay, and then Maya asked, is emotional maturity the same as spiritual maturity? Well, I think they really are very connected. Let's be honest. But you know what? Emotional maturity is like emotional wisdom to me is related to intrinsic awareness, like the capacity for self-reflection. And you know, the interesting thing about emotional maturity in my own experience and then working with so many is that we actually have to do quite a bit of deep healing work depending on the level of trauma that we have. Because, of course, when we experience traumas as a child, as a young person, we then actually have to go in and bring deep healing to those traumas and those places where we get triggered, which, if we're in an unconscious place, is just projecting all of those emotions and reactions out. But really, what I've seen over the years with grown-ups, which is different than with younger people. I mean, I mostly work with grown-ups, although I am a mom, and kids are incredibly wise, but they're also kind of crazy. Like, kids are actually like hanging out with kids. They're actually like kind of like nuts a lot of the time. They're just like, got it going on, but there's not that containment. So as we grow older, having a bit of that containment helps us to grow culture and large projects and organizations and grow food to feed all the people, those sorts of things. But the emotional maturity to me feels like it's something that we do actually need. We need eldership to develop. We need, and that could be in a really amazing therapeutic environment. Like, thank God for the therapists and the counselors and, those teachers and mentors that can be a place that we can pattern onto for how do I meet this inside of myself? And so as we heal our deeper inner wounds and our traumas, then I feel that emotional maturity really begins to blossom. And then without that, it's very challenging to move into any sort of spiritual maturity. Because the way that I really like, the definition I really like of spiritual maturity is from Kaya Ra, who wrote the Sophia Code or channeled the Sophia Code, which is just such an important piece of wisdom. I just am so grateful for that book and that text and her teachings and her journey. And she says, spiritual maturity is no longer coming to our spiritual practices as like a pacifier, as a way just to feel better. Which honestly, like, I'm still working with that. Like, my practices really work when I'm feeling not great. And then if I'm feeling great, I'm just like loving life, But there's this point where we begin to gain traction. And then we realize that if we practice when it's easy, it's easier to practice when it's difficult. If we have those daily practices, those daily habits that build our field, that build our coherence, that build our intrinsic awareness, then it makes it easier to meet those intense challenges. It's resilience, but it's also a choice. And so I do feel that to enter the way of sovereignty, we don't have to enter it in any way perfect or healed or not actually still like, meeting that growth edge. But we do need to be willing to begin to become 100% responsible for our existence. And one of the things that Viktor Frankl said, and then I do want to make sure we have time for a little bit of a practice, is he said, and I just shared this in our Diamond Light Healer course too, because I've just been really jiving on this quote. If it is we ourselves who must answer the questions life asks of us. And to these questions, we can only respond by being responsible for our existence. It is we ourselves who must answer the questions life asks of us. And to these questions, only we can respond by being responsible for our existence. And so that to me is entering the spiritual maturity and what these intense rites of passages of the challenges that life can bring give us the opportunity to do. And so as we're entering into the field, and maybe we can take the next 10 minutes to really drop into the field, the morphogenic field of true prosperity, the spirit of true prosperity, we can really welcome in those places of great challenge. No, not getting dysregulated by them and like dropping into the trauma vortex or anything, but just recognizing they're here to serve. They have an essential medicine. And so perhaps I'm going to just take a moment to ground. I invite you to take a moment, take a few deep breaths. I'd like to invite, if it feels good to you, is bringing your hands to your heart. Our dear friend Karuna, if you see this posture, we have this beautiful friend and elder Karuna who's been practicing yoga for well over 50 years, and she's just amazing. And she was sharing that this mudra is actually the mudra of the warrior, holding one's own heart. It was like, wow, that's amazing. How beautiful. And so, holding your heart, invite us to move into a breath, just a conscious breath. The masters say that when we breathe with full awareness, we can transform those dense and heavy conditions within us. We can alchemize them into light, sami, effervescence, joy. So it doesn't really matter what form of breath work we engage in. What matters more is that we are conscious. Consciousness is the key. Consciousness is all, and all is within consciousness. What is it in your life that feels like the lack, the challenge, the pattern that you just don't know what to do with this breath? Can you find a place of honor for this challenge? Recognizing that within the way of sovereignty, within the field of true prosperity, this field of consciousness, this state of consciousness, within every experience lives the guru, the teacher. It's all happening for us. It's what Albert Einstein calls the friendly universe. Now, what makes it, what transforms it, what creates it into medicine, power, creative juice is turning towards it. That great challenge, that lack, that pattern that you just don't know what to do with, as an opportunity to awaken to a deeper truth of reality. This is your spiritual freedom. You get to choose. And this is your life. Only you can be responsible for what you experience, even though you're not in control of what you experience. You have the ability to respond. And so I invite you to ask your heart, your soul, and remembering that always with you is your guidance council. So many guides, so much support, just waiting for you to welcome them in. Welcome, beautiful guides. Welcome, higher self, soul. Please surround me. Please surround us in your invincible love as we learn how to reclaim our sovereignty, which is the foundation of true prosperity. And within this held space of invincible love, I invite you to ask your heart, your body, your deep inner knowing, how can I turn towards this situation I am experiencing as an opportunity to awaken to a deeper truth of reality? And if Clarity has come. Wonderful. If you still feel pretty unclear, wonderful. This is a practice to bring in an opportunity to meet life in a way where your state of inner well-being, true prosperity, spiritual freedom is not dependent on meeting a goal or fixing your life or anything like that. It's about truth and love, the love of truth and the truth of love. And this is how we set ourselves free. And what's so amazing when we do this is whole new possibilities awaken. Whole new timelines emerge. It's actually the shortcut to passing the test within the game of life. So taking another moment, and then when you feel complete for now, we'll close this call. However, if you're in a deep place of communion with your heart, please continue. Don't let me interrupt you. Keep going. And recognizing that it is a new moon and we can plant seeds, and we can offer our gratitude and we can, work all these beautiful tools of inner state, presence, creativity, dancing with life. And, within everything that happens, everything we experience, the greatest joy and the most profound pain, and especially when we're in extreme pain. This is my practice, and it's an honor to share with you. And try it out. Take it for a test drive, take it around the corner. You can go as far actually as you want. You don't have to just stay in the neighborhood. And from this, we don't just paint our room a different color. We create a whole new inner landscape. Thank you, thank you, thank you for participating, for listening, for taking this time to be with me. Thank you to all of our spiritual guides, all that's holding us, the spirit of true prosperity, the archangel of prosperity, to the beautiful lineages of love, and to each of our very own souls and our human selves, which are kind of funny, a bit awkward. We get triggered easily, but we're just cute like that, as our dear friend and elder Carol would say. We're just cute like that. It's just part of it. Awesome. Okay.